So the first question, obviously, I want to ask you guys. Obviously, we heard from Lexi her kind of side of the story, but I want to hear it from you guys because you had a totally different perspective on how everything went back when that happened. So why don't you talk a little bit about what happened with Lexi and how you kind of got to where you are today?
You want to go?
No, you go.
I'm trying to make her not camera shy. Yeah, so, February 2nd of 2016, we were the all-American family living in Viera, Florida. Lexi was a sophomore. We had our son, Carter, was a freshman. We had just retired from the military a few years earlier. And we were living the American dream, so to speak. We had it all. And, one night, Lexi decided to go to the gym for a run. She was supposed to meet us at a lacrosse benefit for my son. It was a long wait. We were going to Long Doggers there in Viera. So long story short, she said, well, I'm going to go kill some time. And she went to the gym, which was right around the corner, and was running on a treadmill. And like everybody who suffers sudden cardiac arrest, out of nowhere, she went down and she was clinically dead. And, a friend of mine who happened to be in that gym that night gave us a call, or me a call. He was blowing my phone up, honestly. And Carter's coach was a very strict judge from our area. And I kept ignore. And then finally we got the text, hey, is your daughter a little blonde girl that's got a knee brace? And I was like, yeah, is everything okay? And he was like, no, you need to get here right away. So, right at that point, sort of your world goes into a vacuum. And I just ran out of Long Doggers and ran like a block and a half, over to the gym. And I walked in the door at the same time the fire department did. And Lexi was, she was not with us. I mean, she did not look alive. I've seen dead people before. And my kid was dead. And luckily for us, there was some people in the gym that night. There was a membership drive. And they did CPR on her. Another person in the gym went and got the AED. The batteries had just been changed out. The pads had been just changed out. And, they were able to shock her back and get a pulse and have her breathing. She never regained consciousness, until, they took her out of her coma. But long story short, that was our night, and it was a shock. It's, the absolute worst thing that can happen, but also one of the greatest things, because we realized just how lucky we were and what a blessing it was that she made it. At the time, I think now 10 out of 100 survive is the statistic, but at that time it was 7 out of 100. And of those 7, only 1 or 2, sort of regain a normal life. The others usually have some sort of brain damage or some kind of a limitation. So we were extremely lucky.
What, after that happened, so she was in the hospital, talk about what they did as far as her life moving forward. I know they give her, the device. I am so medically challenged when it comes to, terms like that, but I know that, they did all of that. So talk about what they kind of did to ensure that she could have a normal quality of life after.
Well, you want me to go? Yeah, so this is actually where I got on this crazy train that I'm on. I mean, that I'm a nut for this stuff, right?
Passionate is how I like to phrase it.
So, I tell everybody, I've been in medicine for 20 years. I myself have probably done 1,000 to 1,200 school physicals myself. I do orthopedics, which is like the bones and the muscles and the joints and stuff. But when I was in the Air Force, we were the ones that did all the school and sports physicals. So I'd always sort of, you see on the news like the Hank Gathers of the world, these, athletes that, basically experience sudden cardiac arrest. But I would say that there was no way that this was on my radar. So long story short, we met her cardiologist, a guy by the name of Dr. Fallart out of ORMC. She was life flighted over there. And the night that I met him was the night that he said, "Hey, your daughter needs to get a defibrillator." And I was like, "A defibrillator? Daughter's 16 years old. What the heck are you talking about?" And he looked at me like I'm looking at you, and he was like, "Mr. Sima, you have no idea what just happened to your family. Your daughter just survived the unsurvivable, and only 7 out of 100 get the chance that your family has right now. So she needs a defibrillator because this group of heroes, unless they're going to follow her around every day of her life, they're not going to be there the next time." And he basically said, "Look, you got 2-3 days to sit here while we keep her in a coma and, do the research." And I did. And I was just incredibly shocked. And this is where, I'm full of stats. And a lot of that started that night because me as a 20-year medical provider, and I tell people, I'm not being braggadocious. I'm actually I was somewhat embarrassed to say that even me as a medical provider who's done 1,000 physicals, I never understood the ramifications of sudden cardiac arrest. How do we expect, Jim Bob, the school janitor or the football coach or the athletic director, whatever, how do we expect them to understand it when me as a medical provider, I didn't even understand it? So yeah, my daughter, she has a defibrillator implanted in her chest like an old lady. And she will have to have that, changed out probably every 7 to 10 years unless, some great invention, which I'm sure one day it'll come to that, till something is invented where she doesn't have to do that. But that sort of protects her.
Absolutely. So something, I just remembered that Lexi had talked about when I was speaking with her. And I thought it was just so interesting, and I really want to hear you guys' take on this. Was she was like, when I woke up from the hospital, she's like, I don't even remember going to the gym. I don't remember any of this. I don't remember working out at all. Did you guys, when she left for the gym that day, was there anything off with her, or do you think this is something that happened just because of the actual sudden cardiac arrest?
Yeah, we go back to that day and nothing was out of sorts. I mean, the only thing that I can gather is that she really wasn't eating and drinking correctly because she was, stressed with school and she was doing dual enrollment and all. And then she was helping her team after school, but she couldn't play yet because her knee, she was being, well, she'd had knee surgery.
Or whatever.
Yeah. So she was just running stem to stern. And that's the only thing I can think is that she just wasn't properly nourished somehow. And they say that, that's can't really cause sudden cardiac arrest, but that's really the only thing that
I think it definitely probably unleashed something that was there. My family especially, we have a strong history, and we're not sure why. I had my dad was married once before my mom, and they had a SIDS baby. And then I had a 26-year-old cousin that passed away in his sleep. And sort of the crazy thing is my brother's ex-wife, who actually was like a sister to me. We loved her like our own blood. She passed away at 50 years old, sitting at her, at her picnic table 3 months before Lexi had her, her episode. My sister-in-law, Diana, died suddenly, sitting at a picnic table. So this has been all around us. And that was something that was crazy with us is we don't have a diagnosis. Mm-hmm. Even the genetic testing hasn't really uncovered anything yet. So we're sort of left, and there's many families like this, but we're sort of left at, every 3 years, she'll need to get another round of genetic testing just to see if there's anything new that's shown up.
Absolutely. I think that's probably harder. I'm assuming, just not having the answers as to why it happened. And like you said, there's other people who are going through that too, and they just don't have the answers, and it's tough because it's like, you know, we do the heart screenings and we hope to catch, you know, something, but how, you know, there's people where it might not. So it just, it's really tough. You know, something I also want to ask you guys, and Shawn, obviously, as we just said, we call it passionate, you know, now, but how has it changed your family and how you guys go about, I don't know, either physical activity or just going about life, I guess? How has this changed everything for you guys?
I think our family, especially Lexi, me, you know, we still go to the gym. Lexi, you know, Stacey and I both have, you know, parental PTSD, honestly. And for a long while, I slept outside Lexi's room on the floor, just listening and making sure she was okay. She would say, hey, I want to go to, like, she did not. We were hoping she would shy away from activity. No, she was like, I'm going, yeah. She was like, I'm going to the gym. And she went to the gym, and I would drive my car and I would sit outside the gym. Probably for a good 7-8 months, I would sit outside that gym. I wouldn't tell her I was there. But I mean, we were pretty freaked out, but she sort of like turned into sort of a risk taker, if you will. And I mean, she really, I think, was wanting this thing to go off almost, like
she was just testing it.
Yeah, and me and her, you know, we're just like look at each other all the time and just, you know, pray to God. I mean, actually, you know, that's where I think my walk with God became so strong, is because you don't want to tell your kid no. The doctor said let her go. I mean, she tried out for cheerleading, what, a month or so after she got her defibrillator put in her chest, and she made the team. A few months later, she plays powder puff football. And I mean, she's running like 50 yards across, and I'm sitting in the stands watching. Like, there's one particular play, she ran like 50 yards and like tackled this girl.
Oh, God.
Oh my God, I've got to get out of here. You know, I got to start carrying a bottle of Xanax around. But yeah, she's just like an animal, honestly. And I mean, a good honor. I don't know. I think back all the time, like when I was 16 years old, I was a good athlete. I was strong. I was, you know, the healthy kid. And I look back and think, my God, how would I have handled this? And I mean, we're so proud of her. I mean, we know that it affects all these kids. I'm actually reading a book right now about, you know, the things they don't tell you when they release you from the hospital after, you know, having sudden cardiac arrest. And there's definitely changes, you know, definitely Lexi is not the same kid that, you know, walked into Sunbay Fitness on February 2nd, 2016. But she's pretty fearless, and, you know, we're proud of her. She drives crazy.
Yeah.
That crazy all day. Honestly, we would, the night looking at her in the ER at ORMC, we would have taken her any way we could have got her, and God really answered a lot of prayer that night.
Absolutely. Well, she's an incredible girl. I mean, you guys did a good job raising her. And who, like, are you even doing your job as a kid if you're not irritating your parents? Like, you know, putting them on the edge of your seat. So that's awesome. So let's talk about now, you know, what happened this past week. You got something pretty special from the governor. Yeah. So let's talk about your work with that and what, you know, now is what changes you guys have just made.
Yeah. So, you know, when she was in the hot, you know, I have to tell this story. I know, you know, going God on people, some people don't want to hear it, but I stood over my daughter. We stood over our daughter when we didn't know if she was going to live or die. Our Lexi was raped. She got flown to ORMC and she was out. You know, we didn't know, you know, there was plenty of doctors coming in and they were all looking, and, you know, they all but shoulder shrug. You know, being in medicine, I can read body language and I can read faces. And you could ask her, I would not look up off the ground because I didn't want to see their face and see something that I knew wasn't good. But we made a lot of deals with God, and it was like we all do, and God doesn't need anything that the Simas have to offer. Honestly, He owns everything. But we made promises that we would do something. We didn't even know what the problem was, but we knew that we wanted to do something, because it was just such a kick in the chest. And that's where, that night when I was doing all the reading, you're never alone with an iPhone.
Yeah.
So Art told us, you don't know what happened. You need to, basically go read about this, you big dummy. That's what I did. And I found our mission that night. This is the great unknown, the #1 killer in our country, even more than COVID. COVID's putting up a big fight, but sudden cardiac arrest is the #1 killer that kills and bigger than COVID numbers every single year. And there's no vaccine for it. There's nothing, but it's not on anybody's radar, including this medical guy. And that's sort of where we decided we had to do something. And so the first year we battled, Florida is one of only a handful of states that doesn't mandate that our kids learn CPR as a graduation requirement. 1 hour of CPR to save lives. There's 50% of African-American kids don't get CPR. They lay there and die on the ground waiting for the ambulance, which takes 8 to 12 minutes to get there.
If you're lucky.
If you're lucky. It was 15 before they got there for Lexi. So if it wasn't for the bystanders, we're talking a different story here. So we fought and we heard the term unfunded mandate, which means we can't mandate it on schools if we're not going to pay for it, which is pennies. So long story short, that first year we got a law passed. But at the last minute, instead of making it mandatory, they made it encouraged, which, doesn't really hold, like we want it to. And then the other thing we wanted, believe it or not, in our state, we don't have athletic trainers. We have coaches who have to, not only know how to coach our kids, but they also have to know how to be lifesavers. Mm-hmm. And, they just don't understand. If a medical guy doesn't understand, how does a coach understand? Until it happens to you, then it's a different story. So we identified that not all the, the coaches have it. And then the big thing is the AED, the defibrillator. Most, including our Rafe passed away. One of the reasons was that they couldn't get the AED. You can get the AED on board in 3 minutes. There's a 90% chance you're going to save that kid's life. And every kid we hear about, most of the time it's they couldn't get the AED or they didn't know where the AED was. In the state of Florida, up until this law, it's H7011. It's the Zach Martin law. A lot has to do with heat stroke, but our part is the sudden cardiac arrest. But up until this law, it wasn't even mandated that there be an AED at a football game, unless it was a playoff or a championship game. Never mind at practice, at summer drills, in the weight room. It's no-brainer stuff. I tell Evan all the time, this is like selling water in the desert.
It doesn't make sense. Yeah.
It's easy to be passionate about. It's really just educating people across the board about that this stuff does happen, and you're looking at a family that it happened to, and we were so lucky. But most people aren't this lucky. And so, we actually, by chance, I call it a God thing. We were doing a heart screening over in Orlando a year and a half ago, and we met a family, and it just so happened that their niece was the chairman of the education committee for the state of Florida in the House.
Well, that helps.
That's called us to have us come over and screen her kids.
Yeah. So it was definitely, again, some people coincidence. I call it God paving the way.
Yeah.
We had a long talk, and she was able to set us up with Jennifer Sullivan is her name, and We went over there. You know, in case Evan hasn't told you, I kill people with too much information, but I slammed her full. And yeah, sure enough, she got that ball rolling, and it went all the way through, unanimous on both sides of the House and the Senate. And Governor DeSantis just signed it. And so now, you know, once a year, coaches have to have a CPR course. Once a year, they have to be notified. Anyone dealing with kids has to be notified where the AED is. It must be available when the kids are training, when they're doing drills, when they're doing practice, when they're doing scrimmages, when they're doing real games, playoff games, championship games, basically everywhere. And so that's something that, you know, when we always think, well, why did this happen to us? You know, this is something that we can always look back on and say, well, here's our why. A lot of people don't get their why. And then everything we do with who we play for, you know, also is just, we're so all in. It's, you know, it's not even funny.
That's awesome. So, you know, and you guys were just kind of touching on, and I talked to Gavin's parents, you know, last week. And so something that I thought was really interesting, and you, again, were just touching on is, you know, they were saying, well, when we were in the hospital, you know, Shawn was calling us. They were, you know, are you okay? Is this what's going on? Blah, 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 blah. And what, I guess, are you telling these parents that you wish you would have heard when, what happened with Lexi?
I think in a lot of ways, that's why I do what I do, because there's nothing more scary and more confusing than that. And I just try to be an ear. I try to answer, because you know how medicine is. If you've gone to the doctor, the dude is in and out, you know, before you can even say hi.
Yep. Yeah,
so you're left. We had so many questions, and I'm doing all the talking, so you need to pinch me, but when Lexi was in the hospital, I called the Cleveland Clinic, I called Boston Children's, I called as many people as I could, and it still was like, man, my daughter is going to have a defibrillator. How is she going to live a normal life? And it wasn't until we met with a lady from Daytona. She was actually a defibrillator rep. Yeah. Maybe early 30s. You know, pretty girl, full of life, and they made us a mutual friend made us a breakfast date. The day Lexi got out of ORMC, or Arnold Palmer, I should say, we met with this girl. Her name was Lori, and that was it for us. Like, we looked at her and we saw her living a normal life, and the way she talked and the way she sort of told us, like, everything is going to be all right. You know, basically, yeah. Calm down. Yeah. And we were able to look into the future, and reading magazines, reading books, reading articles, that didn't do it for us. Like, it took hearing from somebody else who went through this and who survived this and who's living a normal life. And I think that's what I try to do. And when I first call these parents, you know, I try to keep it short and sweet. And then if I can feel them ramping up, then I do bring up the Lexi story and just sort of tell them, look, I know where you're at right now. And it's scary as hell. There's nothing that I'm going to tell you on the phone that's going to calm your nerves other than, you know, just be calm. We've seen this before. I'm here to answer any question that you have. And then the rest is just empathy. Like, when I talk to these people, I feel like they're our family, because I wish that somebody would have did that with us. I guess that sounds maybe a little callous.
We're all alone in the you know, the hospital, not knowing.
You think you're the only one in the world that this happens to, and there's such a huge network out there of people who are fortunate like us and have their children, or, you know, families like the shirt I'm wearing today, like Zach Mago, whose family lost him in his sleep. And there's so much support out there. And we concentrate on our kids and the parents, But there's also a big hit with, one day I think it would be great for you to sit down with some siblings,
Yeah.
because my son, he struggles with it. You know, both of my are mighty mites, you know, they don't want to tell us anything, but it's a struggle. And when we go to parent heart watch meetings, like I know you've been to, do these survivor meetings, to hear the siblings talk and to hear their struggles and what they go through, and they sort of get lost in the shuffle. My son raised himself for 2 years because she and I walked around like zombies, honestly.
Oh my gosh.
You know, it's just this huge, huge thing that I feel like when God allowed my daughter to live, then I feel like he tapped us two on the shoulder to get in and get in deep and pay it forward. So, you know, that's sort of what we say. We want to pay it forward and be an ear to these parents that, you know, we're the ones that are, you know, not putting them in this mess, but we're helping them identify a problem, and we just want to be there for them. And they all become like part of the family. And that's pure gold to us. To be able to be there for others is just, you know, it's everything to us.
Absolutely. Well, you guys are doing an incredible job. I'll say that. You know, we've been talking to Gavin's parents. You know, they were just overwhelmed. Like they just could not, like even comprehend, even at that point, still, even just weeks after the surgery, just how, you know, much support, especially you guys were able to offer them. So I think you guys are doing obviously a great job getting laws passed, A, but B, you know, just being there for a lot of people.
Yeah, we're all we're all a part of it. You know what I mean? It's you know, I think God chose all of us. You know, we're not getting rich. This is a nonprofit for a reason. You know, we get rich off of the feelings we get.
Yeah, there's no money involved here.
You know, so you know, even you're a huge part. I mean, you're a professional news anchor, and you take the time to do this. This is such a team effort. You know, all around, and you know, this is a calling. This is not something that you raise your hand for. You know, you sort of get drug into this kicking and screaming. You don't want to be a part of this fraternity or this, you know, sorority, you know, the hard way, I guess, for lack of a better term. So we all are such a huge part of this process, and it's great being in the trenches and exciting, you know, to do this.
Absolutely. Well, that's a good leeway into my last question that I have to ask everybody, of course, and you know, the name who we play for. So gotta ask you guys. You guys can take turns, whatever you want, unless you have the same answer. But who do you guys play for?
All right, I'll go first.
Let him lead the way.
I mean, in all honesty, the cliche would be, oh, I play for Lexi. But in all honesty, I play for the kid and the family that does not know what's about to happen to them. 7,000 times at least, and that's a low ball number, but 7,000 times a year this happens. And now with this COVID mess, I just saw a stat from Aviv, the AED company, that now the number is already up 58% because of COVID. So you think about those numbers. So that's who I play for. I play for that family and that kid that does not know how their life is about to change, you know, just drastically and incredibly.
Really good answer.
I play for those. I mean, I do this so families don't have to go through what we went through. So